Well, the intent of this video is to expose the Chinese cash for credits fraud that was going on in the campus. It was discovered in 2016. It had been happening, it had been going on for years at that point. And so, while the purpose of this video isn't really to talk about WASC or CHIA, I do have a cover letter to them. You can see less than a year ago. And so WASC is the senior. WASC Senior is the accreditation agency for Cal State San Bernardino and UC California, and they are member controlled. So you have 3 to 4 CSU presidents sitting as WASC commissioners. So they're policing themselves, and you can imagine how that works out for the consumers. It's a pretty poor system. As far as CHIA is the federal agency, these are all regulated by the federal government, but you wouldn't know that. I mean, the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, has actually obstructed the investigations into these entities that operate under federal statute to assure several things. One, that campuses have compliant grievance procedures, that their accreditation is sound, and that the receipt of federal student aid is lawful. And so CHIA has never been responsive. We have called them, we have emailed them, they have never responded. Okay, and WASC. So we're not going to talk about Rong Chen a lot here. I mean, he does come up in this complaint because, well, I guess we are going to talk about Rong Chen, but we will be doing a video on this guy. This guy is pretty bad. So in 2015, Cal State San Bernardino is up for their 10-year accreditation. So Rong Chen is the WASC liaison. So as he's facilitating this accreditation, he's also actively working with WASC to conceal the MA TESOL-Korea fraud. Okay, that's at the same time that they're under accreditation. So clearly their accreditation is much more important than the fact that they're violating federal statutes and state laws with this fraud and this ridiculous series of acts that Brian Haynes, Tomas Morales, Rong Chen had been involved in. So, of course, WASC isn't going to respond to this. They have, what's interesting about this is several things, is WASC never produced the formal grievance investigations. They never really even mention them. And this is exactly what we see at Cal State San Bernardino, where Brian Haynes and Sandra Vasquez create a ruse. They fabricate evidence of violence in order to subvert an Executive Order 1097 that's currently occurring on Brian Haynes and Morales and Vasquez. So they do this to disrupt that investigation, which they were successful. That investigation was based on the fact that they hadn't conducted the formal grievances. So WASC is completely contained and controlled by the same public agencies that are supposed to be policed by them. And so this is a reasonable request. You know, we're outlining what's happened, and we're proposing some resolutions. And of course, WASC isn't going to get involved. WASC and CHIA are just hiding. So let's take a look at the email from Cindy Shum. So she is doing this post-retirement. And we can see that, you know, she appears to have really appreciated this time, but she talks about the unpleasant days. Can you imagine what it would be like to work with these clowns at Cal State San Bernardino if you're an ethical person, if you're actually interested in students and creating authentic learning opportunities for them? It'd be very frustrating, right? So you can see this is what she's really talking about. She's talking about the academic integrity of Cal State San Bernardino, that has become a degree mill for international students. It's exactly what we're saying about Korea. This is exactly what we're saying about the MBA with Vietnam, and also with the cyber university that Cal State just signed a memorandum of understanding with. It's going to be another academic fraud, just a way to bring in money. So we can see that, I mean, this is just so, you know, smoke and mirrors, because they're working with Chinese agents, which really there's no connection with academia and these agents. These Chinese agents are merely facilitating this fraud. And what the fraud is that it's a cash for credits scheme with Chinese students, and these Chinese students are coming into America too. And this would be another international student visa violation. So this poor woman's tried to stop the unethical admission practice. Okay, this is exactly at the MA TESOL-Korea, where we have them avoiding IELTS and CAE, the Cambridge Academic Exam, which are international standards for foreign students to be admitted, particularly to public universities like Cal State San Bernardino. So we know with the Korean fraud that they had a tell me more, that the Korean students were taking some assessment at home, and they were let in. I mean, there was no assessment. And this is how all these Koreans got into this program. And of course, when you admit a bunch of students who are academically unqualified, you're inviting, and from a culture where plagiarism is accepted, you're actually setting it all up. So she talks about the Chinese students cheating. Of course, I mean, it's all about that. This is a money game. This is for finances. So here she's getting into Morales. Now the thing is, we already have him covering up the Korean TESOL fraud. It's clearly that he did this. I mean, he uses his stooges, Milton Clark, Andrew Bodman, Brian Haynes, his soldiers, to do his work while he hid out in his office, hiding behind the skirts of his secretaries. He never met with us. We were on campus in August of 2015. About half a dozen Americans wanted to meet with him and talk about this program. He's not going to meet with us, right? So let's go on to Shum. So Morales endorses his name on this Chinese fraud. All right, you can see that he's actively involved in this. The school set up by a Chinese agent, supposedly on the grounds of a university, and again, it's in charge of its own admission, finances, teaching, administration, yet the students are not eligible to transfer from this program. So they're violating a transfer process that should be taking place because, of course, this is just to make money. So Morales apparently has traveled there on taxpayer money, to basically take a look at the fraud that he's involved in with Rong Chen. I mean, these guys are involved in a series of illicit activities that the average American would be held accountable for. There's no way you're going to work for a public agency and get involved in this level of criminal conduct. So they talk about this doctor had face-to-face conversation with a Chinese agent about the background of the students. These students are not university students, and their coursework cannot be transferred. So the new group of students, it's just going to get better, right? The new group of students are taking 33, great number, right? They're enrolled in 30 semester units. Can you imagine anybody taking 30 semester units? So we know that the baccalaureate level, the average is about 12. There's some students that might be doing 16 to 18, but 30, and they're doing it in a foreign language. So you can see it's just a fraud. The thing is, you can see how quickly you can pay your way with Cal State San Bernardino to get whatever degree or whatever credits you want. So they actually crafted this whole fraudulent academic program in China, bypassing their accreditation standards, state and federal law. They're actually entering these countries to commit these crimes. They're involved in wiring monies. There's illegal wiring of money internationally that they're using with these funds that they're illegally gaining. So this 30 semester units is just insane. It's so clear. It's so obvious. And that's why WASC can't touch this. WASC has known about this since 2016. We threw this at them in 2016. And at that point in 2015, they basically threatened me with a letter. This is how they roll, is they can't produce the formal grievance investigations. Of course, we have the Chancellor's letter, which I go through in part 1, 2, and 3 on this channel, with the Chancellor saying it does exist, but there's no attachments to that investigation. There's no proof, and this is after a 7-month State Attorney General, supposedly a State Attorney General investigation. So although I retired, I cannot leave without telling the CSUSB family of all the money-making business you and your agents are doing. And so I really appreciate it took a lot of courage for this woman to tell the truth. She's Chinese. It's not within her culture to have to do this. You really wouldn't place a state employee in such a position, but this is what they do. I mean, the thing is, unless you're Vasquez or Allison Sutherland, the dean of students, or tainted Carmenova with the College of Extended Learning, unless you're actively willing to participate in the fraud, you're not going to have a job at Cal State San Bernardino.